Today I'm going to be explaining a little bit more my thought process and how I start structuring the strength and conditioning programs, what goes in my mind on the beginning of when we start working together, or even how you can start implementing this on your training program and start working on your strength and conditioning to lay down a strong foundation for your skills or sport-specific work on Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, MMA, whatever your combat sport is. So one thing that's very important to understand is that not necessarily everybody is going to have the same needs on the beginning. So this is a foundation, but not necessarily you are going to need to work on these three specific qualities at the beginning. But I'm going to be explaining why I lay down on this way. So first, body composition. If you want to be a strong combat sports athlete, or if you want to be a good runner, you need to have the body composition that's going to support that type of training. Let's say if you want to start running marathons, but you are weighing now 150 kilos, yeah, you can definitely start training and everything, but if eventually your goal is to get better at running, especially running marathons, and improving your time and performance is a focus, you are going to want to get at a lower body fat percentage, lower body weight, and get closer to what a runner looks. Of course, there is a massive variation on that, but you can understand what I'm talking about. When you see fighters from a specific weight class, you're going to see that most of them look a certain way, and they have like lower body fat or a little bit higher body fat, but that is a trend. And most people are going to fall on those lines. You don't want to be too far away from that. So let's say if you are going to be competing on BJJ and you are 177 centimeters, you want to be on a lean body percentage, lean body mass. You want to be, let's say, around 15% body fat or even less. You don't want to be at 55, otherwise you're going to be fighting with guys that are like much more conditioned and stronger than you for your height and your weight. So one of the first things that I think it's important to work on, it's getting into a good body composition to the sport and the weight class that you are trying to compete. Then strength and range of motion. Nothing matters if you are not able to get into the positions to your sport. So let's say I want to become a gymnast and I don't have any overhead mobility, I can't open my legs more than this, that's not going to work. The same works for combat sports and your fighting career. If you want to be a jiu-jitsu athlete, you are going to need to be able to somewhat be flexible, to bring your legs close to your head, bring your arms overhead. You are going to need to be able to move through positions that are very specific. So you want to build that. Also, the same applies for MMA or Muay Thai, where you are going to need to kick. So you need to be able to get to those positions. So that needs to be a very important area of focus for your sport. You need to think first, okay, what are the positions that I need to get in, how I get to that range of motion, how I build that flexibility. Then we also have strength as a foundational quality, because if you are not strong enough to handle the demands of the sport, it's going to be much easier for you to get injured. So I would say that everyone, of course, like some people that will start combat sports, they already have like a foundation, they have done some kind of like sports or lifting before, so the degree of needs are going to vary. But, and again, there is not any specific number here, but you don't want to be the weakest on your weight class or on the sport that you are competing. Then as we start to go up, we have conditioning. Yeah, I see a lot, especially on jiu-jitsu, guys that come to the first session and they have like zero conditioning. They can't move for more than 1 minute, or on the warm-up, they are already gassing out. You don't want that. So it's very important that you build a base of aerobic conditioning and strength so you can at least take advantage of this session and the sports practice. If you are very unconditioned and you don't have the strength to handle a 1 hour session with good quality, you are not extracting as much as you can from that session. So that's why I lay down that as a foundational base also. Then we start to get more specific. So if you have good strength, you have good body composition, you can move through different positions on your sport, and you have the conditioning, it's natural that you start now thinking about being like a more powerful athlete and a faster athlete, because that starts to give you advantage over your opponents. You can see guys that are strong, guys that like look strong, so they have good body composition, but not all of them will bring that to another level and start building power and speed. After that, like I said, not necessarily it's going to be on that order, but why I put nutrition a little bit higher on the pyramid, it's because for building conditioning or to get to a specific body composition, you may not eat the best way possible for sustainable performance. You might need to go on a calorie deficit so you can lose a little bit weight a little bit faster, so you get in a better body composition, and that can decrease short term the performance on the training. So nutrition, I would say that it's going to be somewhere here. Once you have a good body composition, good base of strength, like I said, even to build strength, maybe you're going to need, and build conditioning, maybe you're going to need to eat a little bit more, and let's say even if you are building conditioning, more carbs than when you are trying to just to sustain performance and maximize recovery. So at this point, you're going to be eating to maximize recovery so you can train the best you can your skills, your sport-specific sessions. So the most important thing is always your sport, but a strong foundation of strength and conditioning and body composition can help you maximize that training. And then everything else starts to be second, not the priority, starts to come as an accessory work for your sports training session. So let's say if you are already an athlete that can move very well, you have a good range of motion, strength, your body composition already look like the athlete that you want to be, and you also have like power and speed, then everything else starts to be accessory work for you to be able to train as much as you can your sport. That's why it's not doesn't make a lot of sense for me when people say, oh, but yeah, professional athletes don't do that. Yeah, they have been doing 3, 4, 5 sessions a day for how many years? 15 years. They had the time to build that strength and that power and speed and the body composition because they trained a lot on the sport. So it's not the same if you are 35 years old, you have a full-time job, and you want to start practicing or you want to improve on your BJJ, and you don't have like any strength, never moved before that. You might need different things than a professional athlete. So this is the foundation of your strength and conditioning approach and your nutritional approach. Now, how we start applying that, I would go on this direction. For the strength and conditioning program, I would plan something like 3 times a week, and you can mix the strength and conditioning sessions on the same day, or even if you want to split, that's also fine. So let's talk first about the strength. There are many ways, and different athletes will have different needs, but this is an easy way to think about that. Upper on Monday, lower on Wednesday, on Friday we go for a full body. And we have in each session 1 compound movement. So what I mean is like a movement that you are moving many body parts of your body. You are not just going for an isolation. So for example, squats, deadlifts, bench presses, dips, strict presses, Romanian deadlifts. You can see that like all of them you are moving multiple joints. Heavy rows, chin-ups, dips, strict presses, bench presses. You are not just isolating one joint. So one compound movement, max effort. That means that you are going to be working, let's say, on the 3 to 5 rep range. Of course, there is variance on that. You could go 6, 8 and still get strong. I'm just making this easier to understand, but there are many different applications from that, also going 1 or 2 reps. But like I'm saying, if you are here looking for this video, it's most likely you don't need to be testing your strength or going so heavy often. So that's why 3 to 5 reps. 2 secondary movements that comes after the first and primary movement. Here you are going to choose movements that are still compound movements, but they're going to be a little bit more reps, lighter load, so you can assist the development of this primary movement, but not being taxing your body too much. So let's say I did squats here. Then I'm going to go for Romanian deadlifts, so I can target a little bit more my posterior chain. And I'm going to be doing, that here is going to be 1 or 2 secondary movements. Let's say we go for Bulgarian split squats. And then we start with 2 more accessory or isolation work, let's say leg extensions and leg curls. So you just isolate one joint, knee extension, knee flexion, and you are going to be working on your weaknesses. Could be adductors, glutes, whatever. Same works for the upper body. For the full body, you are going to, let's say here I did as a max effort. I did here bench press, I did here squats. Here I would go for, let's say, deadlift, because I had like a lower body more focused on the quads, glutes. So it's balanced, but not like a pull. It's more like a squat movement. Here I would go for a hinge pattern, let's say deadlifts. And for the secondary movements, I would go for chin-ups, because I had the bench here, so I would go for chin-ups as a moderately heavy, and also strict presses. So now vertical instead of horizontal. So you can see that there is difference on patterns also in muscles that you are targeting. And the isolation work, it's going to be based on your needs. You can also add here neck work, core rotation, and just heavy carries. That's always nice to work on. And for the conditioning, you can still do on the same day at the end of the sessions if you have time, or if you don't have a lot of time to do big sessions, you can split. So let's say Monday you do strength, Tuesday you do conditioning, and you go on that way. So for the conditioning, again, massive variance depending on your needs, but for beginners or people that are starting to introduce, this is a very, there is no mistake on doing this. It's definitely going to help you. It would be 3 times per week. 2 sessions are aerobic. So let's say Monday you do an aerobic session, Wednesday you do one interval session, and then on Friday or Saturday you do another aerobic. For the aerobic, you can pick bike, row, walk, hike, jog, ski for 30 minutes to 1 hour, or even more depending on your level, or if you are doing a long ruck. And for the intervals, I would say that because you can work on being very short, let's say 10 seconds, very explosive with complete rest, or you can work on a little bit more extended power. I would say that most people can start on a little bit longer intervals, 2 minutes, 4 minutes with complete rest or incomplete rest, as long as you can keep the pace for every interval. And the reason that I would say that most people should start on a little bit longer, it's because a lot of people will not have the required strength to put enough power on the 10 seconds to be worth the work. So for example, when I program for an athlete to be very explosive on the bike for 10 seconds, if you have like very little strength, you're going to see that if you have done like CrossFit or something like that, sometimes you have sprints, people will finish the session, oh, that was too easy. Oh, this is too much rest. Yeah, because they don't have enough power, enough strength to put enough effort on the bike for that work to be meaningful. So I would just prefer that first you start building from the endurance side to the more powerful side as you build the strength. Unless you are already a strong athlete, then you can definitely prioritize the areas that you need the most work. So, guys, I'm going to be expanding on many topics. This is just some visualization and not like everything, just one way that you can start looking at things to start applying as fast as you need to your training. And if you want any help or if you have any questions about coaching, feel free to send me a message. See you next time.